Hello, it's your friend Doublebite, and boy howdy is it distracting to see like a slightly delayed image of myself on the screen behind me. I have my webcam like directly in front of me, and then my TV screen is behind that, and wow, this is fucking tripping me out. I just watched the episode of Doctor Who like an hour ago, where it's called Midnight, and it's the 10th Doctor, and there's the thing that's like repeating what people are saying, and then it starts like saying it exactly as they're saying it, and then it's just saying before they're saying it. It's really freaky. Anyway, so here's a game dev talk. So I had this thought, like when I was like dicking around in the bathroom, freezing. I was pooping. There you go. You happy now? Ugh. Anyway, and then I forgot about it, and then I'm like, I want to play for Tangle Deep, and it's like, y'all, the last two videos I did were both Tangle Deep, and I gotta switch it up. So like, hey, why don't I talk about this thing that I was thinking about? So what I've been thinking of is kind of like last time I was talking about kind of the loop of the game that the players go through. This time it's kind of a similar topic, but I want to talk about the game procedures. So I'm going to define the procedure of a game as the set of stuff that happens in a cycle. You can have very strict procedures, very loose procedures. And I'm also going to define that there's the game's procedure and there's the player's procedure. For instance, let's use chess, really basic example. The game's procedure is player takes a turn, examines state of the game. If checkmate, game is over. If not, next player takes their turn. Don't argue with me on this. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, the player's procedure is make a play, assess whether it's check, because then the player needs to declare checkmate, or check or checkmate, whatever, and then pass his turn. We can have a game like Magic the Gathering, where the game's procedure is, players take turns, and the player's procedure is untap, upkeep, draw, main phase, combat, main phase, end phase. So there's a strict procedure for the order that things go in. Now, within that, players can have flexibility. In chess, yes, you have to make a move. But in Magic, you can choose to attack, choose to not attack. You can play cards in your first main phase. You can play cards in your second main phase. So you have that flexibility comes within your personal procedure. And all games have this. Let's look at some wild examples. So Minecraft, the game's procedure is the loop, the day-night loop. And then the player's procedure is very self-defined. There's no set steps in their procedure. But a player may create a procedure. So your procedure in Minecraft might be during daytime, farm things. During nighttime, go dig. That's my usual procedure. And that's kind of a loose procedure that can change. So that's a little bit less formal than Magic the Gathering's procedure, because it's player defined. But players usually do define some form of procedure when playing a game. And then you have middle ground kind of stuff. For example, Hearthstone has the turn-taking procedure of the game, and the player procedure is like Magic's but loose. You can play cards, you can attack, but you can intermingle those. So Magic has a strict game procedure and a strict player procedure. Hearthstone, being similar, has a strict game procedure and a less strict player procedure, if that makes sense. So what I was thinking about, what I was finding interesting, is when can you, what cases can you break procedure? When does breaking procedure make a game interesting or engaging? Because breaking the rules is fun. Everyone knows that breaking the rules is fun. But it's just a matter of how does breaking procedural rules feel? Let's invent a new game called Yu-Gi-Oh!, where it's like chess, but you can play trap cards. I want to make this game now because it'd be fucking awesome. But fans of chess would probably hate that for like 500 reasons. But even fans of chess variants would probably hate that because it breaks a procedural rule of chess, doing things on the other person's turn. And yeah, maybe some of the crazier ones will like it, but anyway, whatever. And you see a lot of this kind of procedural breaking in games like Magic and Hearthstone. For example, in Magic, players can lightly play a procedure break with instants. You can play an instant on your opponent's turn, or cards with flash. So you are breaking your own procedure and doing something interesting. If you think about it, this is a source of frustration for your opponent. The player has done something that I could not predict that was against the procedure of the game. They have disrupted my turn with their procedure. And then you can have even more drastic breakings of procedure. Things like skipping draw step. When someone plays, what is it, Yawgmoth's Will? Yawgmoth's Bargain? Something fucking Yawgmoth. Anyway, it says skip your draw step. You can pay 1 life to draw a card. Something like that. That's breaking. You drop that down. That is a big, big difference. That's a big change. That's going to be very swingy. So a game-breaking effect should be significant. You can have a player procedure breaking effect and have it work, but a game procedure breaking effect is going to have a much bigger impact. It should be expensive. Like looking at Hearthstone, you have secrets, which are a lightly player procedure breaking mechanic that that I actually quite like. I like that your opponent has to predict it, and it's based on opponent knowledge, and you have that guessing game. I kind of like that more than instants and Magic, because I like playing weird decks in Magic, and I'm like, oh, I want to have this great turn, I'm gonna play this turn, and someone plays a counterspell, and you're like, well, fuck you too, mate. Jim, fuck you, Jim. Anyway, but like in Hearthstone, you have the Mage Quest, which if you've done a certain X number of things, you then get to take another turn, and that's a huge effect. A player just took 2 turns in a row. You just broke the game's procedure. And in Hearthstone, where the game's procedure is players take turns, that's a huge procedural break. And you can have other things, not just timing based. For example, going back to Magic the Gathering, Platinum Angel, you can't lose the game, opponents can't win the game. You've broken the procedure of how this game operates in a fundamental way. So this works very obviously for very structured games, especially like board games. And how can we apply this to video games? Well, you can lightly game break in Minecraft. You can go to sleep, and that turns it from night to day, and you have broken the game's procedure in some small way for some benefit. And in a weird sort of way, that's a big hack. You have taken something fundamental about this world, and you have said, I don't want to play that rule. Compared to Terraria, where there's like day-night and there's day-night. I don't think there's any like rare items or that you can use to change the time. I think that probably like, mods are going to do that. But that's a hard rule of the game, that the game chooses to not let you break ever. So I think some other game procedure rules. And again, I'm trying to focus more on gameplay loop breaking things. So like Platinum Angel is a looser example because you're assuming that the check if a player is dead is part of the loop. And you can have like other kind of law breaking things. For example, in League of Legends, normally you can only buy items when you're at the shop. There's one character who can buy items not at the shop. Is that a case here? I don't know. You're breaking a rule, and it's kind of a procedural rule. It's not a temporally procedural rule, but it's still a fundamental rule of how characters can behave. So I feel like that one's again a bit vaguer. Again, this concept of the game procedure and the player procedure works best for board games, and as you get into video games, it gets looser. But I think that's part of the appeal, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to get at here, is that it's very easy to define a procedure in a board game and then define breaking it and have that be impactful. But I think it's an interesting area to explore with breaking procedure in video games. For example, you can break other expectations in video games, horror games that will control your character, like an Amnesia where the camera sways or you look away. or games where like, they move your mouse for you or change your files or something. So there are definitely ways where games will break the rule of a game in a more abstract sense. In a what is the game is you, the player, control the game. Now the game is going to control you in some way. But there's relatively few games that break the procedure of what happens, right? Break the core gameplay loop. And I think that's an interesting area to tap into and break into the core player loop, because most video games don't force the player into a player loop, right? They let the player define their loop. So I'm gonna go to Dominions, and the gameplay loop is players take turns. More directly, the players all submit turns. The order of events is in some way magically calculated as far as battles and movement and stuff, and then the turns are sent out. So they take turns, but they're simultaneous turns. But there's the receive turns, process battles and movement, send out turns. That's the core loop. And the player's procedure is typically, at least when I'm playing, okay, check out my messages, see what happened, do some maintenance work, check on my recruits, check on my research, check if there's new mercenaries, set up any items I want to build, set up any spells I want to cast, move units. So that's my core procedure. And there's not that much that's interesting to change about my core procedure by my end. So, yeah, I had no. By the way, I didn't plan for this at all. Not at all. I just sat down like I want to play Tangle Deep. I want to do something else first. So I don't even have any notes or anything. But let's think of how we can disrupt the game procedure and the player procedure in Dominions in an interesting way. So let's think. How can we disrupt a game procedure? You could have events that resolve on your turn. Which would be breaking causality and impossible, but say assassinating someone on your turn, where you see the results of the assassination before the opponent does. And actually, you could do something really cool with this. Okay, imagine this. For those of you who don't watch my Dominions videos, Dominions is turn-based kind of tactical. What's the term? 4X? Is it 4X? Kind of game like Civ. You create armies of dudes. You send armies across maps to kill each other and build shit. So imagine a time-traveling assassin unit where you can assassinate a commander on your turn, and you can see the result of the assassination, and you cannot further affect that square. So the assassination can be the only thing you do on that square. If the opponent's move caused that commander to move from that square, it creates a paradox. So if the opponent's unit is still there on your turn, on the next turn, your unit kills it. If the opponent moves that unit before you receive your next turn, you get a paradox and your unit vaporizes into existence. But on your turn, you can make the attack and know it's successful, and then make another move from there. So, like, if this person is here on the next turn, I know I win the attack. As a way to get some kind of predictive knowledge. That could be really cool. And that's a way to break player procedure in an interesting way. Or break game procedure. Other ways you can break game procedure would be like denying some. Let me think of another interesting way. This is like going away from Twilight Imperium, but thinking of another game. Going away from Dominions, but thinking of another game, Twilight Imperium. There's a nation that can stall their turn. They can say, instead of taking my turn now, in the order, I'll delay it and skip my turn and then disrupt the order that way. So I wonder if you could do something like that with Dominions 5. A nation whose units move after everyone else's units move. So never simultaneously. They're always, if a unit, they can never successfully chase or retreat because the other players will all move before them. And again, that would be a subtle way to break the flow of the game. It's something that the players would then have to play around. And it would be very fundamentally breaking. Easy ways to do player procedure disruptions are things like blocking them from recruiting, blocking them from casting spells. But again, these are not breaking player procedure so much as breaking player action. So how else could you break a player procedure in a game like Dominions 5? How could you break an opponent's procedure? It's tough to do because the procedure is pretty loose. One thing an individual player does as part of their procedure, even if it's the game controlling it, is upkeep and gem income. So you could say curse a player's income or gem income, and that's a player procedure disruption. The player's planning on this procedural element to go as usual, and now it is suddenly not. And that'd be a very disruptive effect. That's the idea behind these procedural disruptions, is that they're always going to be very distinct, powerful effects, especially when they're PvP disruptions. So let's try to think of a single player game that has a well-defined procedure and well-defined disruptions. Let's think here. I think going back to the card game thing, since again games with rules tend to have easier case studies, with Slay the Spire, you have your draw, draw, play, discard cycle, and then the Silent has some cards that let you say, hey, don't discard these cards. You get to keep these 2 cards and just draw a new hand from the rest. And that's a powerful effect. And that's one of the fun things about the Silent, I feel, and Slay the Spire, is that Silent does have a lot of these procedurally disrupting effects. How many cards can I play a turn? How many cards do I draw a turn? How many cards do I discard a turn? And those are all interesting strategic things that the player can then do that disrupts how the game should be going in order to get that extra edge. And in a similar way, one of the most frustrating bosses, in my opinion, is the one that steals time, where every 12 cards you play, after the 12th card your turn ends and it gets stronger. That's the game disrupting your procedure. Hey, you're used to being able to do X. Now we're going to throw in a new procedure. There's a new new procedural element, a new structural rule to the game. Like imagine the Gathering. Hey, once you tap 5 lands, your turn is over. Something along those lines. So what I'm thinking is, with these procedural elements, is that they still have to remain special. You can't have a full breakdown of order. You can have a lot of breakdown of order, but it has to be notable. Like if there was a card in Magic the Gathering that cost 1 mana and said, players can never attack. It'd be strong, and who knows if Magic's got to do this? Maybe even balanced. How the fuck do I know? Probably not. But with procedurally breaking elements in games, they have to feel really exciting, even if they're not exciting. Even if there's something as boring as you don't get income. Okay, not the most thrilling thing ever, but to the player, it's going to be an intense moment. It's an intense moment when you've played your 12th card without realizing it, and now your turn's over. Procedural disruptions are some things that should allow for a new gameplay or require a new adaptation in a way that could not be done otherwise. And I think it's something to think about. I think we kind of have this approach of video games as not having as many rules, as the player can just do stuff. In Minecraft, the player just does stuff. They don't have a procedure, but you do have a procedure, and it can be disrupted. Like, think about it. What if there's a night blooming plant? So if you want to grow this plant, you have to go outside during the night. Not that complicated, but you've disrupted the player's procedure. You've now said you were previously sleeping at night and avoiding monsters. you now need to go do this extra thing to get this resource. And that could be interesting. Now the player has to, maybe they're going to arrange their base differently in order to grow this plant. They're going to have a specific open air house to grow this plant. I think thinking about ways to disrupt single player games and multiplayer games on these kind of procedural levels and interrupt what the player was expecting to do and be able to do is a really interesting idea for game design. And again, a lot of the more meta disruptive things, taking control away from the camera or whatever, that's kind of been the realm of horror games or art games or both, is these kind of really abstract, what is a game kind of disruptions. And I honestly think that there's a lot more that we could do with that. I think that there's a lot of room for letting players break the rules in interesting ways that aren't being explored because it's not just a matter of player choices, right? We like to have players make a choice to do X or Y. And I think that more opportunities to say, I did Z, and now I can do A, B, and C. And the game would not allow me to do A, B, and C. It's not just I unlocked A, B, and C. It's that I broke something to do A, B, and C. You know, what consequences are there to do A, B, and C? Or the game going, hey, we're going to do J, and now you need to do K. And you were not expecting to do K. K was not in the picture beforehand. K is something completely new. The game has evolved something new that you need to address because the rules have changed. But yeah, I just think this is something. I just wanted to ramble at y'all. It's something I've been thinking about as a way to make interesting game design, and it's a way to give players something else to react to. Like, I think I was kind of trying to explore this kind of tangentially idea a little bit when I in my game Color Balance that I did for the Ludlum Dare. So in this game, you can collect red, green, and blue squares. Collecting blue slows your character down, but makes things worth more points. Collecting green makes the dots stay on the screen longer, but makes them worth less points. Red makes your player move faster, but makes the dots stay on the screen less. So are we disrupting the player's procedure? The player's procedure is just collect dots. So we're not really disrupting the player's procedure. But the player's procedure might have started out, their game plan might have been collect all the dots. Once they realize these mechanics are at work, their plan might be collect a balanced number of dots. So they have, the game has exposed a rule to them in a certain way. So how can we add on to that? There could be something that breaks that rule of the game. But we're still, no, it's still mechanical. No, I'm not really, I guess what I'm bringing that up is, even though it's mechanical, we're addressing the mechanics of the game and not the greater rules of the game, it has that feeling. It has the game is cheating or the player is cheating. And how do we counteract the game cheating? It's not react to the challenge that the game is providing us. It's the game is doing something unfair, or I am doing something unfair. The game is saying, you did a good thing, but we're going to give you less points. The Magic the Gathering, you're saying, well, you can only go on your turn, but sometimes you can go on your opponent's turn and really screw them. So it's kind of like, how can we make a game cheat you, and how can we make you cheat the game, or how can we make you cheat each other in ways that are engaging? And this is something I'm going to think about more. If I think of cool mechanics that could do this in a game sense, I might make a follow-up video to ponder this some more. But I think it's interesting because I think the big games kind of learn a lot from board games, in that we tend to lose a lot of board game structure, and in that structure we lose the way to break that structure. And we change the kind of experiences provided. And I don't know. I've been pondering this. I'm going to ponder this a bit more. And now I'm probably going to just switch over to a Terraria stream in a little bit once I go get some water. Because that's my life now. Rock on, Terraria. Anyway, hope this was at least remotely interesting for the two of you who have been watching this whole time, which is like cool. Congrats. But hope it was at least slightly interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments. And if you liked me doing this kind of like abstract kind of ramble or not, I'm gonna do them anyway. But I like to hear feedback. And until next time, double bite out.